See, in telly, what they actually do is 5, 4, 3. There you go. But there you go. That's my random word to get us started. Hello, Rosa. So plan here is I introduce myself, then you introduce yourself, and I've written down how I need to introduce myself. So my name is Barry Williams. I am a centre predominantly, or wing, and occasionally number 8. My cap number is 88. I am straight, and my pronouns are him and he. Rosa, what's your details? And I genuinely mean that because I don't actually know your name.
Yeah, right. So I'm Scott Rosborough. What was the questions you asked?
Second one was position. What rugby position to play?
Position. So either play 9 most recently for the last 2 seasons, or wing.
Cap number?
Haven't got a clue.
Fair enough. Let's make one up. 17. Sexual orientation?
Open.
Open. And your pronouns?
He. Or him.
I mean, and there you go. Yeah, I've learned today there's more than one. I did need to get help with that one, to be perfectly honest. So the plan here is that I go through a range of questions with you, and you give me your perceptions, and we see where we get to in terms of the answer. So starting with the first one. Bearing in mind sort of all your experiences of playing rugby for the Outlaws, nights out in the Boston, etc. What comes to mind when you think of LGBT spaces or groups?
What comes to mind of their spaces? That they're safe, networking environment that can be very what's the right term? So I'm trying to think of the best terminology. It can be very not catty, but quite a bitchy environment sometimes. A little bit fake, maybe.
See, I mean, again, I suppose that's probably not something I appreciate. But what's that? Is there like sort of cliques within it, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that sort of world is very. You're either in a group or you're not in a group. It's not very open to welcoming newcomers all the time.
Is that sort of groups within groups, or kind of the wider?
Yeah, I think groups within groups. So I think there's an element of safety in numbers, and people sort of go off with their own groups, and then that's kind of how it unfolds, so to speak.
Okay, because that's really interesting. I mean, because obviously my perception of things, we tend to be sort of quite binary in terms of sort of just seeing a community, and we sort of put it all together. I suppose that's a really interesting sort of steer in terms of sort of how it all.
Yeah, no, and I'd say it's quite promiscuous as well. That sort of environment, really.
Cool. Okay, so conversely. So that's the LGBT space. What do you think of when sorry, I'll start again. This is a disaster. When you think of a traditional rugby club, what images come to mind?
Yeah, it's quite lads, sort of orientated. Traditionally, it's a game for the boys. I think rugby as a whole is quite a in mind beforehand that it's maybe a little bit more of a middle class sport. People generally would do rugby, cricket, etc. So I think it falls into that bracket. Therefore, in my mind, I would say potentially it could be quite. I'm trying to think of the best term. It's quite close knit, maybe.
Close net. Okay, cool. And so I suppose on that, I mean, have you ever played rugby before you joined the Outlaws?
Only at school.
Were you any good?
Average, just PE sort of level.
So I'd never played rugby before I joined the Outlaws. I mean, I like to think it shows. Anyway, how has the Outlaws changed your view of rugby clubs and teams?
The Outlaws has definitely changed my view, but I think my view has probably changed over time considerably. That I think society as a whole is now a lot more accepting and open than maybe how it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You know, I think life has changed and moved on. I'd say there's probably still quite a long way to go, and you know, all you can hope for one day is actually, as awful as it sounds, is clubs like the Outlaws won't actually need to exist, because that divide won't be present. So that, I suppose, is a goal that you can hope for, is that any player can go to any club and be welcomed with open arms, so to speak. You know, I think that's very important to, you know, realise.
Yeah, and that's a couple of interesting things. I mean, just my own benefit, really, I'd like to learn about there. So, in terms of sort of the attitudes changing, and you might not be able to articulate it because I suppose it's probably quite a slow change. I mean, is there sort of, you know, is there key things that you can sort of point out in terms of just your experiences of how things have got easier, sort of over time for you, just outside of the outlaws in terms of normal life?
Yeah, I think you know, when I was growing up as a kid, you know, my perceptions and unconscious biases came from maybe my parents a little bit. You know, there was the right way to live, and that's to get married, have children, blah 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 blah. And I think it's very much a generational thing, because even from when I was 18, 19 at college, you know, I'd say there's probably only one openly gay person at college, and that's a college of over 250 people. I think looking back now, actually there was probably a hell of a lot more, but it again was not broadcasted, very behind closed doors sort of affair. But I think if you look at the youth of today, so I say the next generation, you know, the ones that are now 17, 18, 19, 20, yes, some elements of negativity do still exist, but I think as a whole, it's almost became, or has become, more trendy to be, inverted commas, open. I think a lot of people don't, yeah, like it is what it is, I suppose. I think that is more the case now. There's not that sort of hostility as much as maybe there used to be.
And just sort of, I mean, and I suppose this is something that's sort of not occurred to me until now. Do you kind of find you have to spend more time having to explain yourself to people, just in terms of sort of, you know, general social interactions outside of the outlaws? Is it just harder work?
I wouldn't say so now, but when obviously I was a kid, so you know, I didn't actually come out till I was 23, 22, 23. So I think eventually one day there won't be a coming out process, you know, and I think that happens now. It is just accepted, you are who you are. But back then, so I'd say for sort of 4 or 5 years after that, I personally felt I had to explain myself, explain why didn't I tell anybody? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? And you'd kind of fall into the whys. But even now, you know, I go on quite a lot of holidays, and every time I've been away with one group of people, there's always been a social situation that's come up whereby we've been speaking about, you know, adult things, and almost the partners of other people, so a male female couple, a lot of the time, sometimes quite a lot of men are like, oh god, right, okay, and actually take interest in what you've got to say. And it almost sounds like they've got to get it clear in their mind, and then they process it, hold it, and move on from it. You know, it's kind of like a process. But I think the negativity around it now is somewhat less, you know.
Okay, so based on kind of that, and I suppose those experiences, and what you said earlier about sort of the LGBT spaces, has your perception of those spaces changed since you've played for the Outlaws?
No.
Okay, is it a different sort of experience sort of in terms of other LGBT spaces and the Outlaws, or is it still?
Oh yeah, so I'd say the Outlaws. Okay, I'm with you now. So yeah, the Outlaws is very different, but LGBT spaces as a whole, I would say, are very much all very similar. But you know, the Outlaws is different, and they're different in a way of such. You know, at no point do you not feel that you can't be yourself, and I think that's very important, because actually, in workplaces or you know, day to day in public, a lot of people feel they can't be themselves, and people perform at their best when they're being them. And you know, I think it gives that, not ethos, but it gives that acceptability that actually you can be who you want to be, and I think that's very important.
Cool. So just going back to what you were saying earlier about sort of playing in school, what was that like, sort of in terms of just sort of playing rugby at school? I mean, I don't know whether you were out or anything, or you know, or whether people had perceptions of you, but what was the experience like in school, sort of in terms of playing rugby? I imagine you were quite good in school.
Pardon me?
I imagine you were quite good in school.
In what sense?
At rugby.
Not overly. I mean, I only played for maybe like 3 years, and that was at middle school. And then after that, you know, sports wise, it was, we only played what we were told to play, as it were. So yeah, it was never a huge thing, but it had play day element of. And what was it like? You know, it was fine. To be honest, it was quite interesting. You know, I'm not the biggest of people, and back at school I was, you know, a hell of a lot smaller than a lot of people, and you would naturally avoid getting into a situation where it related to strength or size. You know, you'd end up, you as a player would have your advantages, but it may be speed or whatnot, but you'd have your strong points and then very, very weak points. There was no sort of in between.
So casting your mind back, how did you feel before your first training session at the Outlaws?
Jesus, fine. I wasn't apprehensive. I think I had gathered enough information prior to going to know how it was going to be. I'd say I was maybe slightly nervous of meeting new people, and I wasn't overly chatty when I was there, but you know, I think after a couple of sessions that kind of alleviated.
Okay, and sort of the day after your first training session, sort of after you'd been running around a lot. I mean, I don't know whether you were doing a lot of physical activity at the time, but how did you feel after you'd been training for the first time?
Oh, fine. I didn't feel tired or exhausted or anything. Felt quite pleased that I'd done something new. I suppose where I was at really in my state of mind was I needed to go and do something new. I was going through a breakup with my partner, and you know, I realised the only inclusive people or LGBT people I knew were through work or associations through work, and I thought I need a way as a person to be able to meet different people outside of that bubble, as it were.
Okay, so I'm following on from that, sort of what advice would you give to a new member or someone who was watching this now and thinking about getting involved?
You've got nothing to lose. Yeah, you might get a broken leg, broken arm, but they're easily fixed. So yeah, give it a go and see if you enjoy it. And you know, if you don't, then you don't, and you could just maybe be a social member or something. But again, you know, you're going to meet a great bunch of people and have hopefully some allies for life.
Excellent. Can you remember your first game, Ross?
Yeah.
Could you remember how you felt after your first game, the morning after?
Yeah, I felt like I got a banging headache. Not because I'd been drinking, but because one of the Wessex players decided to clothesline me just as I was about to score a try. First touching ball, boom, clothesline, out of the game. So
that was
yeah,
the Wessex Wyverns. Did we win that one?
we did win. Yes, not thanks to any help from me.
Right. It all counts. It all counts. Last one from me. If you could describe the Outlaws in 3 words, what would they be?
Challenging, fun, sociable.
Nice. Well, Ros, I've had a bloody wonderful time. And actually, I've learned quite a lot. And I think I need to speak to you more because it's really interesting. So what I'll say is thank you very much for now. And I can't wait to see who you pass it on to.
Oh, brilliant. Jolly good. Take care. Thank you very much.
All right. No worries.
Thank you for watching the interview with an outlaw. If you like what you saw, please click like. And if this is the first time you're here, why not hit subscribe for more from our channel? We release 5 every Friday, so let's see who will pass it on next.